Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we're going to talk about a brand new model on the European scene and a car that will definitely be very appreciated by those looking for the biggest bang for the buck. Right next to me you're going to notice the new MG ZS Hybrid Plus. That's the full name of the car. It's the second generation of the ZS and it's just arriving over here in Europe as a rival for very popular cars such as the Dacia Duster, such as the Renault Captur, to some extent maybe the Renault Symbioz, the Yaris Cross, or even maybe the Hyundai Kona. So it attacks the B segment car, the B segment crossovers if you will, but to keep things fair, we should only compare this car to those offered with a hybrid drivetrain. That's why I mentioned the Duster, the Captur, maybe the Mitsubishi ASX, and a number of other cars, because for now this is only offered as a full hybrid, and that of course has some repercussions in terms of pricing. Now recently the EU announced that it will be implementing some new taxes for Chinese made cars, and this is one that will be affected quite a lot because the MG brand, some of you might know, has been founded in the UK in 1924, but due to some really bad economical decisions, they ran out of money in 2007 and were acquired by SAIC, which is a Chinese car maker. And ever since then, SAIC has been playing with the MG brand and the Rover brand, and they have been offering a number of cars in certain key markets around the world. But now they are apparently poised on taking over Europe, and they are bringing a lot of new models over here on the old continent. This is one of them. The ZS is in its second generation, and in this configuration it's only offered as a hybrid. We will see a ICE version later this year, but for now we're only looking at a hybrid that uses the same technical solution as the MG3 before it. So we're talking about a 1.5 liter four-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol engine joined by an electric motor and a tricky transmission. That's good overall for 194 horsepower and 425 Newton meters of torque. So it's a pretty good car in terms of specs, but we're gonna drive it and see how it handles and how that power translates into real world applications, especially since this car is only available with a front wheel drive setup. Now in terms of size, this is a subcompact car, so it will be smaller than a car like the Ford Kuga, for example. But it is bigger than a Duster by about 9 centimeters. It is 4.43 meters in length. So yeah, it's a subcompact to some extent. It's really close to the compact segment. It has a wheelbase of just over 2.6 meters, and that should offer some more room inside compared to the previous generation. In terms of design, I'm not gonna tell you if I like it or not. I'm going to leave that up to you in the comment section below. Please give it a score from 1 to 10, 10 being the best looking version in your mind. But I will mention the fact that you do have daytime running lights over here on the top of the headlamps, and depending on the equipment package you go for, you will have halogen lights or you will have LED lights. But the LED ones are just using a simple LED light. They're not adaptive, they're not automatic, they're just not using a conventional light bulb. So yeah, overall the proportions in my book look good. The ground clearance is 177 millimeters, and around the back I do like the way they reshaped the tail lamps, and the boot has 443 liters of space. And I also like the fact that we have the fog light, the rear fog light, right in the middle of the bumper, just like you would on an F1 car. But that's just as far as these similarities go. So as I said, the boot has 443 liters of space. You're gonna have to mind the stuff I have over here. So yeah, 443 liters of space. The rear bench is foldable in a 60-40 manner, so you can actually use it a lot better. If you fold both of those seats, you get 1280 liters of space in the boot, and the hatch is not electrically openable, it's manual, and I actually prefer it this way. That's your third brake light. Let's see how you fit inside. The door opens quite widely, so your access will be easy enough, especially if you're taller. The materials used are, well, this is definitely cheap plastic, but you cannot really expect anything else in this segment at this price point. Every single manufacturer uses this kind of plastic. Maybe they should have done a softer touch material over here in the middle side of the door card, but that's okay. This bit over here is soft touch. This is synthetic leather to make sure your elbow is okay. And this is the interior of the MG ZS. So plenty of room. Let me just show you. So I'm 6 feet tall, 250 pounds. This is how I fit behind a driver of my size. The driver's seat is adjusted in my comfortable driving position, and this is how much room I have for my head. So taller people, I would say, I don't really consider myself tall, especially if I travel to Holland, but people over 6 feet should fit quite snug in here, and it's definitely a big improvement compared to the previous generation model. Something you won't see on every rival in this segment is this, the air vents for the rear passengers. Those should prove helpful both in summertime and in wintertime. And we have an USB-A port over here and a very low, as you can see, transmission tunnel, even though this car doesn't have all-wheel drive. So the material used in this car, which is the top spec one, this is synthetic leather, but it actually feels quite nice to the touch, and this is how the dashboard shapes up on the new MG ZS. Mind you, not all models get keyless entry. This is a top spec version, so it does get it. Let's check the door card. The same material is used on the top side over here, but over here we have soft touch plastic. This is synthetic leather once again, and it actually feels pretty nice to the touch. It is a nice touch overall. This is how the door card bins shape up. Not too generous, but okay overall. And this is the driver's seat. These are actually the front seats. Mind you, even in top spec versions, only the driver's seat is electrically adjustable. And I found that the lumbar support, even though it's adjustable, it's a bit too much for me. I would have preferred if it went even further back overall. Not a lot of side support, and the seats themselves are a bit harsh, but you should test drive this car yourself to see if they fit your configuration. Let's hop inside. Let's start the car. Okay, so this is the steering wheel. This is the top spec steering wheel, and it's wrapped in natural leather. So if you care about that sort of thing, this is something you should know. The steering wheel itself does resemble the MG4 one quite a lot. We have buttons for the multimedia system over here, buttons for the cruise control over here, and two favorite buttons which can be configured. In this case, they are configured for the recuperation level. You can see it changes over here in the dash, and this one adjusts the AC without having to enter a dedicated menu. So this is the infotainment system you will find on the MG ZS. This 12.3-inch screen only comes on the two top spec models. The base version only gets a 10.25-inch screen, but it's okay overall. It is a big improvement compared to the previous generation, and it does feel a lot like a tablet, very simply laid out and everything. We should take a look at the 360 camera because I think it's doing a great job. So you can switch between different viewing points. There's a small camera embedded in the base of the rear view mirror that allows you to see the sides of the car, but you do have 360-degree camera view on this car, which is something not a lot of car manufacturers offer in this price spectrum. So yeah, the multimedia system is okay. We do have some shortcuts over here at the bottom of the screen that do come in handy. So overall, you do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity using a USB-A cable. You also have a USB-C charging port over there. That's only for charging, and plenty of storage space over here on the center console. This will fit just basically any phone, and that's a bit smaller but should be fine as well. The start stop button, the driving mode buttons, and I actually like this gear shift lever. It does remind me of certain Audi models. The dashboard is wrapped in some soft touch plastic. I actually appreciate that. And this is the instrument cluster, 12.3 inches, as I said, and it does come as standard. Now let's talk about the drivetrain for a second. As I said, for now the ZS is only available as a hybrid over here in Europe, and that's going to change next year if I'm not mistaken, because a purely ICE version will be launched, most likely using the same engine as the car we're driving today. So what is it? It's a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder petrol engine, naturally aspirated, using the Atkinson cycle, that's set up to develop about 100 horsepower and 128 newton meters of torque. That is aided by an electric motor set up to develop 136 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. So these two share a gearbox that has 3 gears for the internal combustion engine. So you could say this car has 3 gears, but it's not as easy as that. It basically has 8 different ways it can combine these two power sources to move along. Most of the time, the way I see it, to simplify things a lot, this car is almost an range extended EV, because most of the time the electric motor will be powering the front wheels, and the internal combustion engine will work as a generator a lot of the time, and it will do so either by feeding energy to the battery and then to the electric motor, or by sending power to the front wheels. So it will work as a series parallel hybrid. I'm not going to get into a lot of details over here. The main takeaway should be that this car will mainly drive using the electric motor alone. And they added those 3 gears, which are pretty long, by the way, for those moments when you will be driving at high speeds, and at those sort of speeds the electric motor wouldn't cope, because it would need a lot of power to keep the car going at, let's say, 130 kilometers an hour. So that's why they introduced those 3 gears that are used by the internal combustion engine, especially at high speeds, to get you where you need to go in a hurry. So basically, as I said, this is an electric car that also has an internal combustion engine that kicks in certain situations. It does feel like a CVT sometimes, but it's closer in the way it drives to the E-Tech versions, hybrid versions of the Renault Group, which can also be found on Dacia models. So at times you will notice the internal combustion engine will be revving rather high, and that's because it makes energy for the battery, and sometimes it also sends energy to the wheels. For example, right now I'm doing 67 kilometers an hour and the engine is revving constantly at 2200 RPM, and it's been doing that ever since we left the parking spot, right? So what I do like about this car is the fact that you have instant torque whenever you want to accelerate harder, and that does come in handy because the car feels rather zippy off the line. So whenever you want to make an overtake and so on, it will be quite fast. No matter what you hear, it's setting off rather fast from standstill, and even when you want to overtake. Now the car will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 8.3 seconds, so it's not slow. In total, MG says you can rely on 194 horsepower and 475 newton meters of torque. It's not a slow car. 8.3 seconds makes it faster than most cars in this segment, and once again I am referring to those using a hybrid setup, not a mild hybrid or anything like that, just a hybrid setup in this segment. And the top speed is rather low, 163 kilometers an hour, but that's what MG says. I can tell you that this car will do over 180. Don't ask me how I know, because over here the maximum top speed allowed on the highway is 130 kilometers an hour, but I have a hunch this car will do over 180 if you wanted to. there, we just launched from standstill and the car was really punchy. And I also like the fact that you don't have torque steer and it doesn't really break traction. I don't think it's down to the GT tires. I think the front geometry was set up rather nicely, and that's why the car behaves as it does. Now, around town it will be quite a quiet experience. On the highway though, at higher speeds, you will notice a few things, like the way the car has been sound insulated, for example. It could have been better, especially at 130 kilometers an hour. It's quite noisy inside. Not a lot more noisier than on most of its rivals, but you will feel it. Around town it's rather easy to drive. The steering is very numb, but at the same time it does feel very precise and fast. So you won't get a lot of feedback, but it's quite fast whenever you want to work it. I didn't drive this car in a sportier fashion because I don't really see the sense in doing that. It's not meant to be abused on a track or anything like that. It's just meant to be a very fuel efficient and comfortable car. It is rather comfortable. The suspension is a bit on a stiffer side of things. It's stiffer than I expected, and it's stiffer than I remember from the old ZS, but it's very quiet and very refined at the same time. So it's not, I don't know how to put this. Even though you do feel certain bumps in the road, the judder you feel inside the car are not uncomfortable. You just notice them, that's all. It's not an S-Class to just glide over things, okay? But it's not a sports car either. It's just somewhere in between, if I could say so. Let's talk about fuel consumption, right? So around town I saw an average of 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers covered, and I noticed that is about 1 liter more than I got on the MG3, which is basically the technical brother of this car with a smaller size. But that could also be down to the fact that it's cold, a lot colder than when I tested the MG3, and the car has to use the internal combustion engine to heat up the interior of the car, because that's the way it gets heat, right? So you will notice that in certain situations where the MG3 had the internal combustion engine completely shut off, this car will have it on, because it's colder right now than it was back then, so I had to use it that way. But I'm pretty sure that if I had the exact same weather conditions, this car would be very close to the MG3, especially around town. On a series of B roads with an average speed of 70 kilometers an hour, I saw a fuel consumption of about 4.5 to 5 liters per 100 kilometers covered, quite efficient. And on the highway that went up to about 7.5 to 8 liters. So yeah, most hybrids are not particularly stellar outside the city limits because they have to rely on their internal combustion engines alone at higher speeds, and that tends to raise the fuel consumption overall. But is this a car you would want to buy? Well, it does have all the technology you need in a car in this segment today. It does have an attractive price. Of course, pricing will depend on the country you're watching this from. Over here, this car starts at around 24,000 euros. But it's a very competitive segment because the Renault Captur starts at roughly the same money. The Toyota Yaris Cross starts at roughly the same money. The Dacia Duster is more expensive, 26,000 euros, but that's the top spec version. This top spec model is about 27. So very comparable. It's no longer the cheapest in the segment. So it's going to be interesting to see how people react to an MG that's basically priced the same as a European counterpart. But this car does have the advantage of coming with 7 years of warranty, 7 years of roadside assistance, and 150 kilometers of limited warranty, whereas most of its rivals don't come nearly as close in that regard, except for maybe the Toyota. Yeah, the Toyota does have more warranty in terms of kilometers, 200,000 kilometers. So it's going to be it's going to be quite interesting to see how this car behaves in the current market, because the previous generation had solely internal combustion engines under the hood, and it was cheaper than most of its rivals by quite some margin. This is no longer the case, so you have to choose this car because you actually like it. Do you like it? That's the main question to take away from today's video. I do want to know your opinion of it in the comment section below. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.